What's up, YouTube world? Golden hour, St. Paul, Minnesota. I figured I better shoot this video before the sun goes down. And we're going to keep it short and sweet. How I get Rex. It's part 3 action. If you haven't yet, I really encourage go back, watch the first 2, because I don't know if I'm going to have all the same little things here and there. Let's dive right in, though. The first thing I want to acknowledge and point out is that we have a new way to get Recs, and that's through the VectorImpact app, and it's collecting them. The customer clicks on the contacts, and it's very simple, and it should lead to a ton of recommendations. What I will say, though, is that it's not there's no magic bullet. An app or not, there's no magic bullet to getting recommendations. The things that people have done for 20, 30 years to get recommendations in Cutco and other businesses, building a network of any kind, all of those things still apply whether we have an app or not. What the app is able to do is inflate that number. That's why I hesitated with what I even labeled this video, because the possibilities are wild. I'm not doing demos right now. I wish I was, so I could see how many recs I could average. But I really encourage, if you're someone crushing recs, comment on this video. And if you're someone struggling, reach out to the person who comments on this video. And so here's what I'll say. The methods to getting recs are tried and true. And I know this because I reached out to a guy, Bernie Maslin, Northeast. I had heard from a birdie that he was getting a lot of recs on VectorImpact. So I reached out to him. I said, hey, man, nice to meet you. I just want to know, what are the tricks on VectorImpact to get a bunch of recs? And what he told me was, all of the things in my other YouTube videos. What I'm not saying he watched my videos, but what I'm saying is the methods and the strategies to getting a ton of recs have not and will never change. And so if you can master the fundamentals of recommendations, you'll be able to do this job for a long time. So here's the first thing. There's 4 really big things. You master the 4, you're good to go. You're going to average 10 every single time. There's like 8 or 9 little things I'm going to also teach at the end, that once you start getting 10, then I want you to start implementing, and you can start going from 10 to 15 to 20 to 25 to 30. And I don't even know, where that number inflates to, but first you have to master these 4 things. Grab a notebook, start writing this down. Number 1, you have to change your mindset. Right now, I want you to ask, what is your belief around recommendations? Because there was a point in my Cutco career, well, nobody gives me recs. I'm not getting recs. I never get recs. That's exactly why I didn't get recs. And I would get 2 or 3 per appointment because I expected to get 2 or 3. It wasn't a priority. It wasn't something I was confident in. And my customers felt that. And so I just didn't get recs. As soon as I started getting 15 recs every single time, what happened? I kept getting 15 recs every time because I expected that to happen. And so you may not be getting 15 recs right now. That's exactly why you need to believe that you can. Because the first time you do, you're going to believe it a little bit more. The second time, a little bit more. And I really want to encourage you to believe and understand that there are people who get a lot of recommendations. And it's not because they're seeing the right people or anything like that. It's because they've shifted their mindset to believe that they can do it. The second thing, number 2, second thing is have a lot of energy and be a lot of fun. I think a great example of this is put yourself in your customer's shoes. If you went through an hour-long presentation on kitchen knives, you talked about cutlery with a student for an hour, would you want to recommend them to your friends? That all depends how much fun you had. And so that is the one thing you can control, is how many jokes you tell, how close you are to your screen, how much you smile throughout the entire presentation. Those are things that are in your control. And those are things that influence how many recommendations you get. Because put yourself in your customer's shoes. If you had a ton of fun with a student for an hour straight on Zoom and you bought some really nice kitchen stuff, you'd probably refer them to your friends because it was a good time and you got some really good stuff. But if you were bored out of your mind, it would be a burden to send them to your friends. And I hope that makes sense. The third, by the way, I'll put the Cutco joke sheet in the description again. So if you want 79 Cutco jokes, there's some really good ones on there. I didn't think of all of them. I didn't think of barely any of them, but I use them all. And I do because Mrs. Jones loves it. The third thing to getting a ton of recs, memorize the approach, people. How many times, honest question, how many times has your manager told you memorize your rec approach? If they haven't told you it, you need to say to your manager, why haven't you told me to memorize my rec approach? But if they've told you and you haven't done it, that's normal. It was in 1 year out the other ear for the first 3 months I did this job. However, I want to also ask you, how many songs do you know by heart? If I played Party in the USA right now, could you sing every word? I could. If you played Olivia Rodrigo's album, I could probably sing half the songs already. What's my point in saying that is that if you really care, you'll memorize it, and it all comes from repetition. Repetition equals memorization. I don't want to see or hear anybody doing anything fancy with Rex until you have the approach memorized, because just like I say in the first video, memorize, internalize, personalize. That is the triple threat combo with recommendations. You're not allowed to do personalize until you've done these two first. You can't internalize till you personalize it first. Okay, memorize that approach. What I'm going to do, I'm going to post in the chat room the Counsel rec approach, the one that is grit and glory from the St. Cloud branch last year that is still working to this day. It's updated for VectorImpact. I'll post it in the chat or the description below. Go take that thing, go get a bunch of recs. There's some other little goodies on there too. Click on that link, go steal that, do your thing with it. Go get recs. Let's blow this thing up. The fourth thing is talk about recs early and often. This is probably the biggest tip that I have and the one that can make the biggest difference for you right away. Because a lot of times what can happen, especially when someone's new, is they don't talk about recs until they get to the rec approach. Well, at that point, the customer may not know that it's coming, especially if they weren't recommended and they were on your initial list. And so you may surprise them a little bit. And when someone is surprised, they usually get nervous and they shell and they won't give recs. How do you make someone comfortable with unleashing their phone book is when they already knew that it was going to happen. How do you do that? Read the script, because there is some seed planting in it already. But if you want something extra, again, shout out Sam Paulsner for creating a piece of art. I call it the scholarship approach, the sponsorship scholarship approach. I'm going to put it in the description below, but basically how it sounds is this. It is Mrs. Jones, the scholarship, and this is while you're talking about the All-American Scholarship. So you're on this right here, whatever your demo looks like when you're talking about the All-American Scholarship. Basically, this is how it sounds. Mrs. Jones, we have a scholarship. It's based solely on sales. Okay, but we have an automatic sponsorship that isn't. So everyone I show Cutco to is able to help me out with that. I'll mention it at the end, but because we're a part of the Direct Sales Association, we don't go door to door. We don't call random people or anything like that. The only way I can continue to do the presentations is through recommendations. In fact, everyone I talk to either owns Cutco or is a recommendation of a friend. Your friend, Jared Erickson, he's a sponsor, which means in addition to you, he recommended over 10 of his nicest friends. Lastly, Mrs. Jones, my biggest goal, it's not that you buy a set of knives. The stuff is awesome. You might cook a lot. You might want a set of knives. That's not my biggest goal today. What my goal is today is that I do a great job. We have enough fun over the next 30 minutes that you would want to introduce me to all your friends, because that'll help me get to my goal of 50 appointments by June 30th. And I only know so many people. A guy probably can't walk around town carrying a set of knives, especially right now in the world we're in. So does that sound good? You don't have to buy anything, but if we have a ton of fun, you might refer me to some people. Cool. And again, we'll get to that at the end, so don't sweat it right now. So what does that do? It lets the customer off the hook. That's from Mike Arrieta. I described that from a Changing Lives Selling Knives podcast. If you don't listen to that, go do so. Dan Cassetta, you're a legend if you ever see this. But what does that do? It takes them off the hook and it lets them know you're going to ask for recommendations. They should know that. They should know that by the time you get there, if you do a good job. Also, while I'm talking about the sponsorship, I'm showing them my sponsors. Whatever you use for your goal sharing slideshow, and if you don't have one, watch my video with Jared Erickson on my channel. Your sponsorship should be shown, and the person who recommended them should be on there if you do this right. Because what does that do? It's called social proof, which I'll get to in a little bit. So those are the 4 tips right there. You implement those 4 things, you're going to start getting recs. I'm going to go rapid fire. These last things I'm going to talk about. This is how you go from getting 10 recs every single time, which you will do if you use those 4 things. How do I know? I taught this stuff on team meeting last week. Shout out Emma Dangers. She's implemented 3 of the 4 things. I don't think she hasn't memorized quite yet. And she's got 10 recommendations 3 times in a row. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you see this, Emma, I don't know if she got 10 recs any times before this. And so those 4 things, that's how you get recs. That will never change. Here's the little things, and here's where VectorImpact comes into play. First, through those 4. Here's the other things. I'm going to try to do this in less than 3 minutes. Social proof. Show the sponsorships. Tell them who your sponsors are. Hopefully one of the sponsors is the person that recommended them. Okay. The next little thing, call it a nice people list. So what I'm going to do is post the Counsel Rec approach in the chat room. All right. And the Counsel Rec approach, in it, it has the words nice people list. Now in the old days, you could write it on a sheet of notebook. You can still do that if you want to, get creative with it. But here it is. Did you enjoy the presentation? Did I do okay? Great. Well, hey, this is my favorite part of the presentation. Here's where you can really help me out. I get paid every time I show Cutco to someone, but I can only show people I've been personally recommended to. What I'd love for you to do while I'm wrapping up is just tap on 100 to 200 contacts in there. Just kidding, like 10 to 15. People that you think might be nice enough to take a look at the presentation would be great. In other words, I'm not looking for people that you think would buy, just nice people like yourself willing to take a look. This is what I call Mrs. Jones' nice people list, by the way. The way that we reach out to your friends is through a heads up text, which is in a second, I'll get to it. It lets them know I'll be reaching out. And if anyone responds saying they don't want to talk to the knife kid, I'll just remove the number. I've found in the past that people are really appreciative when they get a heads up text before I call them. So this is really important. For every 10 you click on, you become a sponsor. Once I reach 50 sponsors, Mrs. Jones, my manager gives me $100 Cutco that I get to raffle off to all my sponsors. So it's a nice way for me to give back to the people who've helped me out the most. The way that I get credit for the presentation is if you complete it in the app right now. So scrolling through, who's the first person that you would throw down on the world's nicest people list? And then you wait. There's a lot of little things here I want you to see. The first is what you ask for is what you get. Clap, tap on 100 to 200 people. I'm just kidding, 10 to 15. How many people watching this video have said before, hey, Mrs. Jones, if you could just give me a couple people, that'd be great. Guess what you're going to get? A couple people at the most. So you say, hey, you know, a couple people would be awesome. Why would Mrs. Jones give you 15? You don't even want 15. You want a couple. There's nothing in her that says, oh, she wants a couple. Let me just go above and beyond. She has no idea. You have to ask for what you want, okay? The second thing that you'll see here, nice people list. You'll also see heads up text. You'll also see the sponsorship comes back into play. For every 10 you click on, you become a sponsor. And once I reach 50, my manager gives me $100 I get to raffle off to my sponsors. The way I get credit is if you complete this in the app right now, this should get rid of the objection of I'll do it later. Scrolling through who's the first person you'd throw down on the world's nicest people list. This is what I call nudging them along. This is how you get to 10 almost automatically. And if you can get one, I think a lot of times you get 0 because you can't get one first. You might say like, hey, tap on everyone you think might be nice enough, right? That's too many options. This is the old school way to get Rex right here. Go scrolling through who's the nicest person on that list that you could, who's the nicest person in the world? My Aunt Sally. Okay, perfect. Click on Aunt Sally. Thank you so much, by the way. Who's the next nicest person in the world? Thank you so much, by the way. Who else? Who else is super nice? And as soon as you hit a break in the action, you move on from the nice people list and you move into thought joggers. There's a lot of them on here for you. It's in the description below. I'm sure there's more out there. What the thought joggers are for is for anytime you get a break in the action. So it's you run out of the nice people list and then it's yes or yes questions. It's not, do you know anyone who has an incredible kitchen? It's who do you know that has an incredible kitchen? Who do you know that loves to cook? Okay, tap on them. Thank you so much, by the way. You're already at 5. You're halfway to a sponsor. That was way easier than you thought. Who do you know that lives on a lake? Is there who on that list? Is there anyone that owns a really big boat? How about that? Who owns a really big boat and lives on a lake? Who do you know that lives in Wisconsin? I'm trying to show all 50 states. This you could do all night. And the point is when you do this, you start to get one at a time and those add up. As soon as you hit 10, hey, Mrs. Jones, you just became a sponsor. Thank you so much. If you get to 20, you become a double sponsor. Let's just keep rolling. This is just getting fun. Who do you know that blank? The possibilities are just endless. Okay. That's how you get from 10 to 15 to 20. It's like you could build all night scrolling through that app. And gratitude is how you win in life. Always thank the customer. Incentivize with the sponsorship, double sponsorship. You could give a peeler at 30. You could tell them, hey, Mrs. Jones, if you break my record's 26. If you break my record, I'll buy you a cheese knife personally. I'll throw it in myself. Worth the investment every single time. Mrs. Jones, that's it. That's all I have for you. Hey, I just want to I want to point out that I'm going to use 30 seconds here to get on a soapbox. Everyone reaches the point where you feel like you've run out of people to call. I'll never forget when I reached that point. I was at, it happens to people at different levels in sales. 95% of Cutco reps give up and stop selling Cutco at that point. I want to encourage you, if you took the time to watch this entire video, I want to encourage you to be one of the 5%. I want to encourage you to implement the first 4 things I talked about. I want to challenge you to be the person in your division and in your office that figures out recommendations and teaches it, makes videos, and the person in the field who's averaging 30 to 40 recs with VectorImpact. That's possible thanks to the app. And so be that person, keep working, memorize the approach, have a lot of energy, have a lot of fun, take the documents in the description. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel. Share the video. We'll see you next time. God bless.